What up, y'all? Welcome back to another episode of the Rolling the Bottom podcast. I'm your host, Zach Moore. We're back to talk about the Daytona 500 a week later after it was all said and done. Yeah, I have a little bit of a cold here. I've been clogged up. I got back from Daytona. I was at Daytona Tuesday afternoon, and I got the cold, clogged up. I'm still clogged up, as you can tell. I don't feel sick. And I've just been a little lazy, I guess. I came out with content for Atlanta, mini previews, stuff like that, but it just took me forever to be able to sit down here and film a full-blown podcast. But we're filming it now. If people don't watch this because it's a week later, I wouldn't be shocked. But I'm still going to make sure I get it out there for people if they're interested in listening to me talk about the Daytona 500. This won't be a long podcast because I think everyone that wanted to hear people's opinions on certain topics got what they've been wanting to hear. Door bumper clear, dirty mo media, the teardown from Jordan Bianchi, Jeff Gluck, Danny Hale went on these podcasts, Kevin Harvick's podcast, Stacking Pennies, the Money Lap. All of them gave you their opinions on all the action, but now it's time for me to give you my opinions. With a clogged up, congested nose. I feel really fine, like I said. Just gonna sound a little weird. I gotta make sure I keep this microphone as close to my mouth as possible so you can really get enough of the, so when I talk, it just, you can hear it well. If I go down here, it's harder to hear me and understand me. I feel like when I have more audio and when I'm talking, it sounds better. Alright, so Tyler Reddick is your Daytona 500 champion. Won a final lap there, massive crash, host car leading, got a really aggressive push from Eric Jones, who I think was getting pushed by the entire high line. He spins out, wrecks a bunch of cars, and then I think Stenhouse was up there, but then Chase Elliott has a big push with Zane Smith, and they're moving. It looks like Zane Smith and Chase Elliott are going to take this pack to the finish line, and Chase Elliott's going to win this race. Well, then all of a sudden, here comes Tyler Reddick. He's getting a little push from his teammate Riley Herbst. And then going into turn 4, coming to the finish, Chase Elliott has his lead. And then Zane Smith gets disconnected. And then the momentum that Tyler Reddick had from Riley Herbst, he just takes that entire momentum. And he was able to go to the inside of Elliott. And then come to the checkered. Keselowski had a big run with Joey pushing him. And then Tyler Reddick's teammate Riley Herbst is behind Chase Elliott. He comes up and to block. It looked like he was going to block Keselowski. As we now know, he was trying to go make a move for the win. He wrecks Keselowski, wrecks himself. Then takes out Chase Elliott, Joey Logano. A bunch of cars were involved. And Tyler Reddick wins the Daytona 500. He was like the only car right there. It was Chase Elliott beside him, and all of a sudden he gets wrecked. And it's just him across the finish line. What an incredible finish. A lot going on that final lap. The caution wasn't thrown. Tyler Reddick is at Daytona 500. In December, we had our lawsuit. Swing 11 sued NASCAR. We had that massive lawsuit. And then they come to Daytona, and they win the Daytona 500. Michael Jordan's in victory lane celebrating. Jim France came to victory lane and shook Michael Jordan's hand. That right there tells you that there is something has changed in NASCAR. It's a beautiful thing to see. I don't know, if Jim France has done it in the past. But just how it happened to be that the camera caught Jim France going over to Michael Jordan. Danny Hamlin was there. The whole crowd was there. It was cool to see Michael. The passion he showed, the excitement he showed. It was cool. He got a ring. The Daytona 500 champion gets a ring. There was, of course, a ton of media presence that happened this week because of him winning. A lot of attention was around that. It was amazing. It was awesome to see. Incredible finish. I know a lot of people are talking about the Riley Herbst move, and we've heard from Riley. Brad called it the stupidest move ever. Riley, Denny looked at his in-car audio, in-car data, and when Riley Herbst was behind Chase Elliott, but he didn't want to push Chase Elliott past his teammate. He was going to push a Chevy past his teammate to win the Daytona 500. And he had some momentum, so he took the momentum he had still to go to the outside of Elliott. But just how it happened to be, As Riley Herbst said, that the spotter was yelling top, 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 which meant the top had momentum. So Riley went up there, and it was just a split-second decision that cost him. He was not clear, wrecked Brad, wrecked a bunch of cars. I think Riley did say he was on the Gluckcast, which is a new podcast that Jeff Gluck is doing. He was mad about the finish because he made a move. The move didn't work out. Instead of finishing third or fourth, where, top five, where he's going to finish there, he ended up finishing eighth. Now, look, Brad Keselowski calling the Riley Herbst move the dumbest move he's ever seen. A lot of people would say that Brad Keselowski doesn't have the right to talk about moves at super speedways because Brad's made a lot of moves and been aggressive where he's caused big wrecks. I mean, he caused the wreck in the 2022 Daytona 500 when he pushed Harrison Burton in turn 2 and got Harrison Burton sideways. Harrison Burton ended up flipping. We've seen other moves at Talladega where he pushed Carson Hocevar in the tri-oval, and that was Carson's rookie year, and Carson got loose and went down and clipped the car, and Brad was involved too. So we've seen some aggressive moves from Brad. So I would agree that I still think Brad has the right, for all his success he's had on speedways, to call out something. But also, Brad has also been a guy that's been aggressive and wrecked a lot of cars from his aggressiveness. So there's two ways you can look at that. But look, guys, it's the Daytona 500. If you're going to get mad at Riley Herbst for going for it, I think it's silly. He's trying to win the Daytona 500. And Brad has this massive run, and he feels like if Riley doesn't go in there and block, he might get there. I know Denny in his podcast said he didn't think Brad could get there, but then the data ended up backing up that I think he said that Brad was running like 192 miles an hour, and Tyler Emmett was running around 188 miles an hour. So a 4 mile per hour difference there. He had a push there with Joey. Who knows if Joey gets right back to him and when he needs to. So there was a chance that Brad could have done it. But it didn't work out that way. Tyler Reddick is your champion. What a race. Your top 10 to look at there was Tyler Reddick was first, Ricky Stenhouse Jr. was second, third was Joey Logano, fourth, Chase Elliott, fifth, Brad Keselowski, sixth, Zane Smith, seventh, Chris Buescher, eighth, Riley Herbst, and ninth, Josh Berry, and 10th, Bubba Wallace. Bubba Wallace led the most laps in this race with 40 laps led. I believe that's the lowest amount of laps a driver has led in the Daytona 500. The lowest amount of drivers, the highest driver, I believe this was the lowest amount of laps, the highest, if I can do a better job of this. Bubba Wallace led 40 laps. That's the lowest amount of laps that a driver that had the most laps in the race ever led in the Daytona 500. But Wallace was really actually upset at his post-race interview that he felt like he had the car to win the Daytona 500. He said that this is his best speed weeks. Stayed on the wrecks, right? And yeah, I get that, especially if he was up front. I thought, Chris Buescher was up there. Riley Herbst finished 8th. Josh Berry finished 9th there. Zane Smith, he won stage 1. After there was a big wreck there was a wreck in stage 1 early that kind of split the field. And I think he was part of that pack of cars that pitted early in stage 1 after that first wreck. So then they were able to run out the entire stage, and it all worked out. Where the cars that didn't choose to pit there had to pit, and it kind of split the field in half, and Zane was up front and got the stage win. That's big points, and he finishes top 6. Great day. Brad Keselowski, another guy who was up front. I was listening to Brad all day. It was fun listening to him because he would tell his spotter, hey, he may be in the back of the pack, and he's telling TJ Major, hey, can we work something out here? Can you go talk to this and this so we can see if we can get another lane going? The communication in the spotter stand is really, really unique. And then Chase Elliott, we thought Chase Elliott, finishing 4th, was in the position. But then Chase did talk about how he knew if he made a more aggressive block on the 45, he was just going to wreck himself anyway. Turns out he got wrecked anyway, not being aggressive. I don't know, when Reddick had big enough momentum and he was like a half a car ahead, I don't know with Chase if he sidetracked enough there, would have got there, but it would have been close. But he got wrecked anyway by the 35. And then we talk about Joey. He just finished third. He wrecked there. Ricky Stenhouse Jr., he had no help there. He was actually leading the race or whatnot, and no one wanted to push him, and he was up there. But he still finished second. So, yeah, those are top 10 for now. We'll talk about some of the other finishers when we get to that point. So a lot of these guys were involved in accidents. We'll get into it. Let's talk about the fuel saving. Let's get that one out of the way. A lot of fans were frustrated about the fuel saving. And now the fuel saving really started at the start of stage 3. The Toyotas, I think, had all of those 3 lanes locked up. I don't know, was it Wallace, Christopher Bell, Tanner Reddick? They were all up there. And I know Blaney was mad about the Toyotas doing that, blocking all 3 lanes. I'll have to say, I actually think the fuel saving saved the Daytona 500. Because you don't know, if they choose to go out there and dice it up front, there's a possibility that a wreck happens. And they're reckoning 3 wide. It could take out a bunch of cars. It could be a red flag. There was only a chance of rain coming in. And I would say 20 minutes after the Daytona 500, the rain came. You get another big wreck in there. Who knows? You may not be able to finish this race. That rain would have ended that race. That race would have been over. Because we were already way halfway. It would have been over. But because they fuel save and then were not aggressive, it all worked out where we had our last caution was with 9 laps to go, and it was a 2-car crash, I believe, where Hamlin got pushed by Corey Heim, got loose. I think Denny Hamlin said his car wasn't handling the way it needs to be, so that push from Heim was what got him spun around, and he collected Christopher Bell. But luckily, that was a 2-car crash, and it didn't take that much time to clean up. So if we would have got a bigger crash than that crash, we're probably not going to see the end of this race. The race would have been called when the weather and rain hit. So I think the fuel saving hit the Daytona 5. I think this fuel saving saved the Daytona 500. Now, when it comes to this fuel saving, it definitely needs to change. And I heard a lot of different suggestions. A lot of people talking about the drag. Dale Earnhardt Jr. said that they should find a way to take enough drag off these cars to where if a car pulls out of line, and let's say the field's running 70% throttle, and that car that pulls out of line is running 100% throttle, then that guy running 100% throttle can go and drive to the front. Because there's guys that can run 50% throttle in the mid-pack, running in the middle of the pack, when the guys up front are running 70% throttle because they had that draft to help them. And then you can run even lower percent throttle when you're farther back. I also heard that Denny Hamlin also said that they should find a way to make these cars harder to drive. Make handling matter so much more to a point where, okay, instead of me fuel saving, I'm just going to take my better handling race car and I'm going to go slice and dice through the field and go to the front and take the lead of this race. That could be a suggestion. But I know Denny did bring up as well that the Clash, if NASCAR were to bring the Clash back to the 500 to Daytona, that they could test a new package out. Use the Clash to test something new out and see what it does, see how it works, before just going and say, all right, we're going to bring this new package to Daytona 500 before we've ever seen it. Test it out and see what it does. I know what got me the most mad about this fuel saving is because before this race a couple weeks ago, Alton Sawyer said during, I think it was a competition meeting with the media, I think he was asked about fuel saving, and Elton said that it's not that big of an issue because when I look out in the grandstands and see that our 4 wide and fans are cheering, I think that's pretty good, And I think you're right. The thing is that the casual fans don't realize that they are fuel saving. But I think the hardcore fans, I think they know that they're fuel saving. They know what's going on. So I don't like that. I can even tell. I can tell that the pack was fuel saving in stage 3. They felt slower. It just felt way slower. Like they were probably going. I think they were running at one time running like 52-second laps, 55-second laps. Their fastest is like a 48. I believe, in qualifying, or as a pack, I believe. Like, what? That's 7 seconds off the pace. Really slow. So I'm not smart enough to know what the actual reason, what would actually work. I think NASCAR needs to go and try to test these out. But also NASCAR, which we heard, Dale Jr. Dale Jr. Talked about on his podcast that NASCAR has had meetings with owners and drivers just to talk about things. Or what Dale Earnhardt Jr. would say, bullfrick, bull S, just bull S around about stuff. And just chat and hear people out about things they would be interested in seeing down the line in the sport. Transparency is the one thing I think NASCAR has realized after this whole lawsuit and everything that worked out, or what happened with that NASCAR, I think, is going to be willing to open up with some more transparency and just hear out the owners, the drivers, maybe the fans as well. I'm not saying that fans, I think they know the fans are what drive their sport. Of course, you're not going to have fans tell you how or what package you should use because they're not the ones out there driving. But I do like the fact that NASCAR is starting to become more transparency too. And I think being transparent about this fuel saving on both sides, NASCAR and the teams, could lead to a change. What that full change is, not sure yet. They'll have to do some testing. But I do feel like fuel saving, at least for this race, saved their Daytona 500. Because if there was a big wreck, you don't know if that gets you closer to where that rain was going to hit. And you don't get to finish this race under green. There were some massive wrecks. Early wreck there. BJ McLeod broke something. I think he broke he broke something suspension wise, and he spun out, and he ended his day. There was another massive wreck there where Cody Ware made contact with the one, and he went down and hit. Who was all involved in this wreck? The 54, the 67, the 88, the 40, the 34, the 19. The 19 and 3 are both Bass Pro Shops trucks. Cars, I should say, made contact in that one wreck on lap. What was it? Lap 67 is what it says. I think. What is it? Is it lap 67? I have to look at my own papers here. I think it was lap 67, right? Yeah. Yeah. Lap 67 crash, I believe. It was a big wreck. Just looked like the 51 of Cody Ware made contact, and then cars trying to avoid him. Took out a couple cars. But then there was a bigger wreck, the big wreck that happened in stage 2, where the 88, not the 88, the 40 of Justin Allgaier was out front, and then the Hammer on the outside had this massive run, and he went to the outside, and the 40 blocked him, and then the 40 went in the wall. It stacked out that high line, and then cars were just scattering everywhere, and it took out some heavy hitters, at least guys from contention. Who was all involved? The 1, the 2, the 5, the 8, the 11, the 12, the 22, the 24, the 34, the 35, the 38, the 40, the 41, the 42, the 43, the 48, the 54, the 67, the 71, and 97. I'm trying to think. The 8 was okay. The 11 was okay. 12 was okay. I think, yeah. The 22 was okay. The 24 was okay. The 34 was not. The 35 was. I'm trying to think. The 43 was okay. A couple cars were okay from that wreck because they just kind of spun out and didn't hit many things. But yeah, I think Danny talked about on his podcast that he had such a big run that he probably could have just went to the bottom of the racetrack and cleared the 40. But he didn't. Yeah, but at the split second moment, he just chose to go to the top. The 40 left the top open. And I think also Denny had such a big run that if he wouldn't have used the brakes, he wouldn't have stacked the top up and probably wrecked the top lane and caused it a big wreck anyway. So he just kind of took where the momentum took him. That was a big wreck. And then those are all he made wrecks. I think Justin Allgaier, he took most of the blame for it. But yeah, man, that big rack there with Allgaier and Hamlin, I was right in front of where we were sitting there in the tri-oval, so it was cool to see that big rack happen right in front of us, I guess. Felt bad for all the competition, but it was just cool to sit there as a fan and see all that happen, especially when you watch all these massive wrecks on TV. But yeah, trying to see where do I go from here. I know Bubba Wallace won the stage 2 after that. It was a long, long delay. Yeah, I feel like, I will say, when it comes to the cautions, it seems like NASCAR is letting wrecks play out more. So if it's a single car spin, they're not going to throw the yellow until they know that thing cannot move. And it's going to be put in harm's way. But if it's a single 2-car spin and they can keep going, NASCAR's not throwing the yellow. And I'm a big fan of that because it keeps the flow of the race going. We've seen so many single car spins and it's a caution. I think the Daniel Suarez spin led to a caution that caused Kyle Busch to not win the Daytona 500. But I'm trying to think if Daniel Suarez was stuck because I don't know if it's flat tires. He might have been stuck in the ground because usually when you flat your rear end tires, the car sits on these roadblocks, can't move. So that could have happened anyway. But I like that. It keeps the flow of the race going, like I said. Now, I do feel like NASCAR takes way too much time under yellow. Like, I just feel like the race could speed up more. I'm actually not a big fan of stage breaks anymore. I think they kill the flow of the race, too. I think they're unnecessary, especially in super speed racing. I think they should get rid of those just because the racing is already so good. I don't care if NASCAR wants to go to a side-by-side commercial or a full screen commercial. I get that the stages were meant to be able to, for this TV partners to put their commercials in and not miss much of the racing action, but I just think it kills the momentum of the race, the flow of the race. I think you can get races done quicker if you, don't call cautions for those single car spins and get rid of the stage cautions. Because then you never know. You have a stage caution, then you have a wreck on a restart. That just leads to another wreck, and then you're just stacking it on. I get that the stages were meant for entertainment purposes because, hey, it creates some more restarts, but I'm actually starting to be a hater towards those stage cautions. I guess I shouldn't say hater, but just like I feel like maybe they're unnecessary because you can still get a stage points, just not throw a yellow for it. But those are my thoughts. Then the last one I really want to talk about. So before we had that last caution and wreck with Denny Hamlin and Christopher Bell, um, everyone pitted there, and then they all kind of pitted in small groups of cars. And Michael McDowell stayed out. And according to Denny, he actually felt like that Michael McDowell probably would have had a chance to win the race from staying out there. It would have been close from the main pack and then his single car. But Denny was looking at his data, and he was running around 100% throttle in the straightaways, and in the turns, he was running around 65% throttle. And he didn't pit. The last time McDowell pitted was lap 134. Really impressive that he was able to run that long. Now, a lot of that could have been because he was in the back of the pack. So he was staying with the pack but not burning as much fuel. There's a lot of cars that were out front that they were burning more fuel, saying to spend more time in pit road. And that's kind of what we talked about here. The fuel saver is because they can't pass. When everyone's on, if everyone was running 100% throttle, you couldn't get a third lane going. Everyone would just be sucked to the bottom and it'd be done. But the reason they fuel save, so that's why they fuel save is, hey, I'm going to save more fuel than this guy that's running 10th. I may be 20th. I'm going to save more fuel than the guy that's running 10th. And now pit road, I'm going to be able to jump him because I'm going to be on pit road in less time. That's why fuel saving is a thing, because it's hard to pass in the track, so you fuel save. So that's why if you make the cars more difficult to handle and you put handling back into it, you'll have drivers focus more on trying how can I make my car drive better than everyone else's car to pass them, and then just win the race because my car's better. But it was really impressive that Michael McDowell actually could have won the Daytona 500 by just staying out in field. Really unique strategy. I'm not sure I don't think the 77 Host Bar did that, but he was up there and had a chance to win the Daytona 500 as well. until he got spun out there. But really, really incredible race. He was leading in the final lap until he got a bad push. But yeah, it was a great race, guys. I know some people are saying, how it just seems like it's a survival race now with this car. It's not like, hey, my really good car is why I'm going to win this Daytona 500. It's just that I'm going to survive. And that entire final lap was just a massive wreck. You avoid the wreck, and then you're here, okay? I got someone behind me, and now Chase Elliott's leading, and all of a sudden here comes Tyler Reddick, and there's a massive crash in the end. Like when Dale Earnhardt Jr. and Dale Earnhardt and all these guys, and Denny Hamlin and Brad Keselowski, they would be able to take their really good car and dominate a super speedway race because the package allowed you to do that. Now it's just the runs are so big that you can only do so much. But yeah, I do want to talk about just some stats from this race. Look at the TV ratings. Then there was 65 lean changes. 65 lean changes, man. Wow, that's a ton. 25 drivers led the most laps. Bubba Wallace had 40. Chase Briscoe 23. John Hunter 19. Kyle Busch 19. Russ Chastain 12. Michael McDowell 10. And then Christopher Bell led 9. Joey Logano led 9. Zane Smith led 9. Corey Hyde led 8. Kyle Larson led 7. Austin Cindric led 5. Chris Buescher 4. Justin Allgaier led 3. Yeah, it was a lot of cars that led laps. But yeah, I thought a lot of lead changes, a lot happening. It was a good race. Now, and there was only 5 cautions for 32 laps. It felt like there was a lot more cautions than there was, but they were very spaced out, spread out. So that was kind of nice to see. The TV ratings for the Daytona 500. I gotta get there first. If I can, I go to the Fox PR app. Yep, the Daytona 500. Ratings slam dunk. The Fox Sports delivered a 7.4 million viewers for Sunday's Daytona 500, a plus 11% jump over 2025, which had around 6.7 million viewers. It outscored every non-prime Winter Olympics window on broadcast and cable, topped all broadcast and cable networks in viewership during the race from 2:15 to 5:45 p.m. Eastern. It was the most watched Great American race since the 2023 Daytona 500, which had 8.1. Its peak viewership was 9.1. That was on Fox from 5:30 to 5:45. And then, yeah, it was up 11% from last year's Daytona 500. So a massive success. I saw some other media guy had said it only had like 5 million viewers, and then he deleted it because it was the wrong viewership. But I was like, oh, this is more like it. I felt like the momentum, everything. There was just so much good momentum in the sport right now. And I felt like this race was going to have 10 million viewers because it started on, of course they pushed the race back, but that was the best thing for the race because the rain was going to come and we would not be able to see the finish of this race. But just the energy around the track, at the race, packed house, great weather. The race was good, great viewership on Fox. We have a great storyline as the winner. I felt like this Daytona 500, with everything that happened weather-wise and every circumstance out there, this Daytona 500 couldn't have gone any better. Especially with the way the car and the racing is, like with the fuel saving. I think it went as good as it could have gone. Of course, you could have said that maybe it had a better, I think his storyline was still the better storyline than having Chase Elliott win the Daytona 500. Now, of course, the most popular driver winning the Daytona 500, or Michael Jordan's team winning the Daytona 500. Tough toss up there, but Tyler Reddick was the one. So a great success when it comes to their ratings for the Daytona 500. All right, y'all. I think that's a wrap on the Daytona 500. Yeah, I feel like a lazy sack when I can't. This is not hard to do if I just sit down. I'm not saying it's not hard to do, but I'm a lot more comfortable, and I realize that explaining things isn't as difficult if you listen to a lot of content and you take your time to learn, about some stuff. That was the nice thing about listening on the podcast before I filmed this, is I heard a lot of information I wouldn't have known if I filmed it before. But congrats to Daytona 500. One thing I did want to bring up, there was a lot of controversy. Kyle Busch was like, I don't know where he was. Some people were saying he was like 20th or 30th, but coming to the white flag, coming in 2 laps to go, he was in the pack and then let off. And his crew chief was thinking, are you having a fuel pump issue or fuel issue? He said, no. Why in the world would I drive and race into the wreck? So he laid off and stayed off the pack. A lot of fans, brought up that. I actually think it was smart because he ended up finishing like 15th and drove around a lot of cars that were wrecked. Versus he probably was going to be involved in the wreck because a lot of the wrecks started from the back of the pack. Of course, it started from the front, but a lot of those cars in the front survived it, and then it happened in the back. So, it all worked out for Kyle Busch. But yeah, Kyle Busch was really fast, led a lot of laps, but just, pit stop wise, circumstances didn't work out for him to have a chance to race for this win up front. But that was the only thing. It was controversial, but I think it was a pretty smart move by Kyle Busch. Overall, guys, that's the Daytona 500. If you enjoy my content, go to my Instagram at Rolling Bottom, my TikTok at Rolling Bottom. Of course, you're watching this probably on YouTube, maybe, or my podcast platforms for the audio version. Overall, guys, thanks for watching the Atlanta race today. Looking forward to it. Goodbye.